Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Women's Legislative Roundtable. I'm going to tell you this might be a very different legislative roundtable. We have all kinds of road closures here in Richmond. We don't know if our speakers are going to make it through. We have a couple of speakers who are supposed to be in the building, but it's going to be just a catch-as-catch-can kind of day. So we're going to ask you to sort of give us a little grace as we go along here, and we are going to make the best of it. Anu Sahai has dropped in the link that'll show the agenda, and also there's some information that Carolyn Kaywood, who is the chair of our issue group, on environment, has prepared on legislation. So I asked you to go over there and take a look at that. And since we have a little bit of time, I will tell you this is our penultimate. The question is, why are the roads closed? Apparently, there's some kind of a march here in Richmond. I believe it is the right to life. I'm not sure, that's what I've heard. So I snuck in before the roads apparently closed. Denise Harrington, our advocacy chair, just got here from Williamsburg because she had more road closures than I coming from the north. So she's trying to make her way up here. But we're going to make do and we're going to keep moving. While we do have some time, as I was saying, this is our penultimate, I think is the fancy word, for this WLRT in person. So this week we are doing the environment. Next week will be the nexus between behavioral health and criminal justice. Those are the last two that are hybrid. On March 6th, we will have a virtual one, which will be a wrap-up led by our issue group leaders and their representatives to go over where we are, what has passed, what hasn't passed. Since we have a little bit of time, and I see Anu has already dropped it in there, there is a mini advocacy alert that you can do today. We understand that the House Courts of Justice Subcommittee on Criminal Justice is going to be hearing Delegate 3 Deeds' bill, SB 427, which we call the Second Look Bill. And that is a bill I'm sorry, can somebody mute? Anu, can you mute? I hear some background noise. Thank you. This is the so-called Second Look Bill, which if someone has been serving for a no rape, no murder kind of crime, and serving more than 20 or 25 years, they can have a second look if they are meeting certain criteria to prove that they have indeed changed. This is sort of a response to the, 3 strikes and you're out, the war on crime, where a lot of people were incarcerated for a very, very long period of time. So this is the Second Look Bill. There's a lot of pushback. I doubt there's going to be verbal oral testimony because it has already passed the Senate. But if you wish to follow the link that Anu has put in chat and give some support, it would be SB 427, Creed Deeds. The House has a very good system for this called Hot Speak. Remember, you're speaking as an individual, not for the league, but if you can put some words of support in, that'll be heard later this afternoon. Thank you. So today's topic is the environment. We are expecting a couple of delegates, but we don't know who got through the mess. So we're just going to wing it. And I would like to put her on the spot because, that's fun. We do have our issue group leader for environment, Carolyn Kaywood, online. Carolyn, can I ask you to go over the presentation that you prepared so well and give us an update on what's going on both in the budget and in regular bills with the environment? And I apologize. I kind of warned you this might happen, but I didn't realize it was going to happen this early. So I apologize in advance. And if you could give us an update, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I was only halfway through my post for the second look bill. Our main priority is rejoining the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative because that funds flood protection and weatherization, and it has brought $750 million into the Virginia economy already. The House budget shows us rejoining it and budgets $100 million in revenue for the budget cycle. So this is serious money. I hate the phrase win-win, but it actually comes close to that because it motivates the power generation monopolies to shift to green sustainable energy at the same time that it funds us being able to deal with the flooding that's coming as a result of climate change and weatherizing low-income homes so that it doesn't raise their electricity rates. It in fact lowers them because they're no longer trying to heat the outside world. Plus, it lowers the demands on the power plants because they're no longer trying to heat the outside world. And it no longer heats the outside world. So you see how it all works together. If you happen to have a budget conferee in your pair of legislators, for heaven's sakes, tell them how critically important it is to rejoin the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. Let me see if I can pull up the, yeah. Shall I keep talking, Joan?
Actually, Carolyn, we are very lucky that Brian Etzi from Delegate Alfonso Lopez's office has just come in. So he is going to, the delegate has been called away because there's a committee meeting, right? But Brian. Oh, nothing. One of his bills is going haywire. It's that kind of a day, but Brian is still over here to help us. And so I'd like to welcome Brian Etzi, who is with Delegate Alfonso Lopez's office. Thank you, Brian.
Hey, everyone.
It's that kind of a day, Brian. Just go with it.
Yeah, we Sarah Taylor, who's the lobbyist for Alexandria, always likes to say when you ask her how she is, she says, "I'm session good," which means I'm good considering we're in session. For a normal human being, probably not great. But yeah, no, as I was walking in, I heard mention of Reggie, and I know there's budget language to hopefully make that happen. Because we're really the governor and other folks are being quite short-sighted because of the money that we're getting to address some of the challenges we're facing. But we do have a couple of other sort of valuable things that we've been able to do directly on some of our own bills, but also on some other key issues that, despite the fact that we're in divided government, we get the ball rolling on some key environmental issues. For example, as many of you may have heard, the overused phrase of "peace in the valley" has been applied to PFAS. We have a pending deal that should be able to go through both the House and or it's been through the House and the Senate, so it's just a little bit of wrangling to make sure the bills are exactly the same. But the manufacturers, the all sorts of other, interest groups, in addition to the environmental groups, have gotten on board to get the ball rolling on addressing the issue of PFAS in our water. That's, I think a blessing of divided government is sometimes people, come to the table and they realize, okay, I can't have everything that I want, but I can get the ball rolling. I can build a foundation that we can build off of. So we've done that on PFAS. Another thing we've done that on, and this is one of Delegate Lopez's bills, is above ground hazardous chemical storage. Some of you all might remember from, I guess it was 2014, Elk River, and there was the Elk River incident in West Virginia that literally meant that the capital of West Virginia had no drinkable water for a week because a corroded above ground storage tank had failed and leaked a bunch of hazardous chemicals into their water supply. And despite the fact that we've had several studies that have told us that Virginia needed to step up and do more on this issue, we hadn't done anything, and not for lack of trying. Delegate Lopez has been on it for several years. But again, in the spirit of let's figure out what we can get, we were able to, get the ball rolling. There's pending federal regulation on this that's coming forward, and we were able to not only ensure that DEQ will be required to handle those, to implement those right away. We've also set it up so DEQ would have its own right of action. The Commonwealth would have its own right of action if the federal government decides not to hold a particular hazardous chemical polluter accountable, which is huge and a huge step forward. And then also, in a more technical side, enhanced reporting requirements, enhanced training requirements for people who are inspecting these tanks. So, and both that and the PFAS bill largely passed out, I believe, unanimously in both houses. So that means we're in a really good place, all things considered. We're finding, that there is progress that can be made, and because on some of these issues, whether it be climate change or chemical leaks or PFAS, we can talk about punting until we have a more sympathetic governor or a better majority, but in the meantime, people are being harmed, the risks are still there, crazy weather is still going to happen. And so it's a matter of what can we do now to make a difference. And that's, I think we've been able to make quite good progress on a couple of things. And, frankly, not the official position of the delegate, but just my 2 cents. And I think that we will get the governor to sign on to these things. Not so sure about keeping the Reggie funding, the Reggie in, because he is how he is about that. Who knows? We might be able to convince him it's in his best interest, depending on other things he may want. But on these other things, I think we're in a really good position where I use a baseball analogy and I say it's about giving him curveballs in the dirt. He's either going to swing and look like a fool, or he's just going to let it go. And so I think we've delivered him a couple of curveballs that he will have to just either let pass or look like a fool vetoing. So just on the Reggie stuff, I think we have leverage points to. He has priorities that he wants to get in, and he does not have a majority in the House or Senate to get those forward. So that's that gives us leverage in terms of trying to get him to see reason on it. In the end, he has his own heart. He'll make his own decision. But I think it shows the importance of having a pro-climate majority and a pro-environmental majority in the House and Senate, because it means he's got to play ball. He can't just talk in generalities. He's got to either step up or step out of the way. So that's good. Are we taking questions or?
Yeah, and actually one came in text. What is PFAS?
It is. You might have heard the term in the news. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. It's an acronym for. They refer to them as forever chemicals. There are these things that don't break down in the environment over any appreciable time frame. We're talking like thousands of years for these things to break down, and we've been using manufacturing and in other things. I sort of draw an analogy to like asbestos and things like that. And it's where like asbestos is not PFAS, to be clear, but it's one of those things where they were like, oh, look at this great thing. And then it does all these things that we want it to do. And then they realize, well, actually it never goes away and might be causing problems for humans and animals and nature. So, we're finally trying to do something about that because, we talk about leaving a better planet for future generations. And in this case, we're literally leaving them chemicals. They will have chemicals for the foreseeable future. And we need to work on, minimizing the number of those. And we've made progress on it before. You might have heard about some regulations related to firefighter foam, like that firefighters used to put out fires. So they've limited the use of foams that was a few years ago, that contain those forever chemicals, because they were worried about the, nature impacts, but also the impacts on the firefighters who are, putting their lives on the line. So that is what PFAS are.
Anu, do we have any chat?
Yeah, I have more like, could you talk about House Bill 950, Uniform Statewide Building Code, that temporarily
Yes.
prohibits modifications to code?
Yeah, so that bill, yes. So she asked about Delegate Lopez's bill, HB 950, which has gone on quite a journey. It started off as what we call the stretch code bill, which would have allowed localities to have stricter energy efficiency and building safety standards than the state code. Because currently, the international, I forget, there's an exact name for it. There's an international entity that basically has a recommended building code, and Virginia falls short of that currently. And so it's been a heck of a time trying to get Virginia's code up to that level. So the original version of the bill was to say, hey, Fairfax County, Chesterfield, any particular locality that wanted to, if you want to increase your requirements, as long as they're stricter than what we have currently, that's fine. That had its own challenges, but then we were made aware, as some of you might know, I think it was Executive Order 1, or I'm blanking. But one of the governor's first executive orders was to cut all regulation by 25% across the Commonwealth, and you would think that would include you wouldn't include our basic energy efficiency and building safety standards in that, but we were made aware recently that despite the fact that they just completed their annual or triannual review of the building code, to address that, to look to see what needed to be changed about the building code, and did not highlight any things that needed to be cut, at least not 25%. They announced that they would be entering into what they call the reduction phase, which was allegedly, let's start looking for 25% of building code regulations to cut. And our fear was, in addition to basic building standard, that it would also be energy efficiency would have been on the chopping block, because that 25% was not created by experts. It was a political statement decided in a political meeting. And so what 950, after we amended it, would do is it basically says the governor and the housing board cannot remove any, alter the building code until the next triennial review, few years from now. Just because we were like, at this point, we can't simply afford it. It really shouldn't be a partisan issue, especially on energy efficiency. We're just talking about better using the energy that we have, regardless of where it comes from. So that's the goal there, and we ended up picking up bipartisan support on that one, to ensure that we're at least going to hold serve and keep things the way they are, and not have our building code, again, my words, not the delegates, not have our building code gutted for political aims, basically. So that was what 950 was.
I have no more questions. Thank you.
We are so grateful that we have, how could we put it in good morning, that we have an environmental friendly General Assembly. And so our next speaker, which encompasses part of Prince William County, his district is District 21. And he's been deeply involved in the data center. Ooh, we did a podcast about data centers. I can't wait. Debate, and has several bills regulating the placement and environmental impact of these centers, which are becoming ubiquitous in Virginia. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a nice league warm up applause for Delegate Joshua Thomas of District 21.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Oh, well, hello, everybody online. I didn't know that we had that here. Okay, well, you'll get a nice view of my chin as I try to be respectful to everybody here in the room. Oh, no, it's fine. I mean, yeah, it's got to check vanity at the door in this gig, right? Well, don't tell Clerk Narda. He'll be very, very ashamed that something here doesn't work. But well, hey, good morning, everybody online, and good morning, everybody here in the room. Again, my name is Josh Thomas. I represent District 21 in Western Prince William County. It encompasses all of Prince William County north of I-66 and the kind of two hooks that come down over Lake Manassas and then the southerly corridor in Western Prince William County. And I think as the reputation has now been built up, I am the big data center reform guy here in the House of Delegates. Yeah, thank you. It is something that I was very fortunate that a very notable former delegate, now current senator, blazed that trail for me, and I always want to give her credit, which is now Senator Danica Rome. Give her a round of applause for really planting the flag on what it means to push back against $1 billion industry, which we are learning every legislative session is much more powerful than we always think at the beginning of the session. So what do I mean by that? How do I qualify that statement? So I have 3 bills that are related to reforming the data center industry. First bill is House Bill 337. We'll just start off with some honesty. It is now dead. It has been, I think Cameron Fair's either continued or tabled. Doesn't really matter. It's not going anywhere, which is unfortunate. HB 337 would have pretty much directly affected the Prince William Digital Gateway. And for those that are not aware, that will become the largest data center development on our planet when completed. And then my district, as a House district, would hold more data centers than any other House district. So we're trying to put a stop to that or slow roll it as best as possible, because even just regardless of what your views are on the energy pull, that we talk about that all day, or the water consumption, that much concrete, that is a NFL football stadium size amount of concrete, and the stormwater runoff from that we're going to replicate 37 times over. That water is not getting soaked into that permeable ground that's there now, and it's got to go somewhere. So it's probably going to end up in the Occoquan Reservoir. And if it doesn't, it's going to go somewhere else. It's drastically going to change the lower levels of the soil in that area. Now, once upon a time, I lived in Norfolk, and you have seen in a region that is suffering subsidence in addition to sea level rise and how dangerous that can be. And we've never dumped that much water in certain areas for over decades and decades and decades. What will be happening if we build that much concrete in that area and so rapidly? So that's another primary concern with the digital gateway that I've yet to see assuaged by any type of plan from the developers. I would also preface 337 was probably our most, you call it the nuclear option. It was directly targeting the development. And essentially what it would do is it outlawed the siting of a data center within a half mile of a state forest or national park, which if you look at Western Pennsylvania, you can pretty much guess what that would affect. And then the next bill that we had that is, thank God, still alive is HB 338. It is the only data center reform bill to ever make it to the House floor or the floor of either chamber. And it's the only bill to make it out of a chamber. So thank God for then Delegate Roan pushing the ball. And now we're able to pick up that ball and get it all the way to a new court. And we hope in the Senate that the bill will pass and go to the governor's desk, since he has yet, or any governor has yet to have to answer for data center reform. The bill originally would have required all localities to look at three things when siting a data center. First thing it'd have to look at is the impact on water usage and quality. Second thing it would impact is carbon emissions. And the third thing is the impact on agricultural land. Unfortunately, again, given the data center lobby's unseen power, the bill was amended from being prescriptive to permissive. So now localities may look at these things. And I was not thrilled to accept the amendment, but it was very much kind of the knife to the throat, either accept the amendment or it dies in front of us. So I will tell you this, if the bill did nothing, then it would sail through the Senate, and it is not smooth waters in the Senate right now. The data center industry is vehemently fighting this bill, because what this bill really means is that in our code, the industry will be identified specifically and legislated specifically. And they know that that is opening the door for much more legislation. And so that's really what this bill means. It is a symbol that we can actually legislate towards a specific industry that has yet to have any guardrails put in place. I mean, we're not, those of us that want reform, we're not irrational people. We understand the industry is here to stay. We understand it does some good things for the Commonwealth. I'll not deny that. But it is a new industry with no guardrails. And just as the automobile industry 100 years ago got to operate for about 10 or 20 years with no guardrails, literally on streets and roads, we then quite literally put guardrails on roads and other laws and things like that to help reform the automotive industry to make it a safer and more sustainable industry. And we need to do the same thing with data centers. And so the final bill that I submitted that is sadly also dead is HB 340. HB 340, oddly enough, has some people that I think are still interested in it for next session. So this one, I think we might see some progress on in 2025. This bill would have required the high strength, large power lines to be buried. So that does two things. One, it frees up our agricultural land so that there's not huge power lines ruining tillable land. Second thing it does is it has a less of an impact on wildlife. As you can imagine, we lose birds every year. We lose an immense amount of wildlife migration patterns change, because while we can't hear the frequencies that the power is traveling through, a lot of them can. And it scares and scares them away and changes migration patterns. And if you look at my district or any area that sees a lot of data center development, the patchwork of open space land for these animals is drastically disappearing. And so this bill tried to help ameliorate some of those concerns for an industry that we know isn't going away, but we're trying to find a much more sustainable way to live with. So that kind of encapsulates the work this session on data center reform. We have, again, HB 338 is still alive. It is in the Senate right now. I can't remember. It just got docketed in a committee, so it should be up this week, is our hope. Hopefully they're not holding it to the end to give it a quiet death, but we can give it a good, fair hearing in the Senate. We will not stop fighting. There are some ideas for next year as well. In addition to these bills, I plan to reintroduce all of them. Some of them will have some amendments to get some folks like, oh, thank you very much. Some of them will have some amendments. Actually, Dominion Energy was not against some of these bills. And so I think what we're going to do is make a few amendments so that they're neutral from the outset on some of those, which gives us great ability to get through at least one chamber and hopefully through both. And, in the next couple of years, we might have a different executive that might be more friendly to reforming so far unregulated kind of industry. But I will stop babbling there about reforming data centers, so I can talk about it literally for 8 hours. And so I will turn it over to questions. Yeah.
I have a question on chat. It is related to data center, sorry. It says we
Yeah.
provide tax incentives for data centers to locate in Virginia.
We
Should
do.
those incentives be restricted to areas outside of Northern Virginia?
You know, I mean, that's a great question. I was actually at a meeting last night where I was talking to some of my colleagues across the aisle and in different parts of Virginia. And while I think we are oversaturated here, there are places where they would like a small number of data centers. And I'm not against small numbers of data centers in certain areas as long as we find smart ways and where to site them, particularly with how it impacts the environment. So I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that approach at this moment, because we still want to provide incentives for these companies to come to Virginia. We just want to have a lot more thought put into where we're going to place them, because at the end of the day, for our nation, the United States, from a philosophical perspective, has decided that locality shall have the right to decide where they're going to put land use decision. This is what we decided. While European countries don't do it that way, I'm not saying we should move to that model, but that's just what America does, and that's what Virginia does as well. But we do have the Dillon rule in Virginia that not all states have, although many do. But in this case, the Dillon rule can be our friend, because the legislature can use the Dillon rule to standardize things across the Commonwealth. And one of those ways that we can do that is say, hey, data centers pull from a common state good, which is electrical power. They also impact not just the local environment in some areas, but the neighboring environment in many other districts. And so the actual physical environment. And so because of those state interests, the state has a right to get involved and standardize how localities will address this issue. And so that's our whole argument, is that because data centers have such a statewide impact, the state should have a right to regulate some of that.
Thank you.
And
I
then-
have one more question. Oh, you have a question?
Okay, yeah, gotcha. And we have one in here I want to make sure we get to. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this is about Delegate Simmons bill, HB 208. A comprehensive plan, locality may consider adopting a healthy community strategy. Could this be used to address data centers?
I don't think I have seen that bill in its entirety, so I can't necessarily comment. It is permissive from what you just read to me. So again, that's kind of the issue with my amended HB 338 is it's permissive. Localities don't have to do that. So, we've extended them the right and the ability in the code, so they don't have to infer that they have that right. So that's a positive, and my HB 338 still does that. But for the bill that you just mentioned, because it's permissive, I don't know if the legislature can, use it as in the forceful way that it wants to. But
Okay.
anyway,
Thank
a
you.
question. Yeah. Oh, let's do it. All right.
So the next question will be, when we have a data center forum, are you willing to come and speak?
Oh, absolutely. You'll have to get a crowbar to get me out of there. No, absolutely. I mean, look, I was telling some of our energy monopoly folks, I think 2 weeks ago, it's like we have about a 5-year window to get this right. Because we don't get this right now, the math doesn't math, right? We want to be carbon neutral by a certain time period. We want to turn on not just Prince William County, but if we're looking statewide, over 40 data centers in that time period. Each data center has the same electrical draw as an NFL stadium when a game is going on. So, and just in my district, we will be having the whole NFL on 24/7. And so so we're increasing the draw. We're not increasing significantly the number of renewables or clean energy that will get us there. And so there's a huge incongruency with what we want and what our behavior is. And so we have a very critical window now to start answering some of those questions. Maybe we turn things on slower. Would love that idea. Maybe we look at expanding clean energy sources. Love that idea too. But some of those resources take 5, 10, some cases 15 years, or nuclear 700 years. Kidding. I'm sure we'll figure out how SMRs work one day. It is something that we have to work on now. And we really have, I would say 24 months, but I don't want to scare people. But in the next 5 years, we really do have to solve that issue. So, or at least roadmap where we're going to go. But any other questions?
Thank you.
All right.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Heard it. So when we get our data center forum going, we will coordinate and have him come back. So let's move right on to our next guest. He has been at the forefront of many environmental challenges and is here to update us on the work they are doing during this season. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm league welcome for the Legislative Director of the Sierra Club, Bob Shippey.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the warm introduction and all the folks online. I'll try to do like Delegate Thomas did and not give you too much of my nostrils, but I am the legislative chair of the Virginia Sierra Club. The legislative director position is actually a staff role that is vacant right now. So no, some people sometimes confuse me for staff. Tim Swinski from our staff is here. He's probably glad I'm not on staff, but Connor Kish, who was the legislative director, is now the executive director of the chapter. And so, he's been trying to kind of do both jobs while we look to fill the open position. So I don't know how many minutes you want me to talk, but really 24 hours. Okay, that's very dangerous. I ran for office once, so tennis. So I won't spend too much time on our priority bills because the legislature killed all of them. Despite not to start off on a bad note, but despite champions like Delegate Thomas, and I saw a representative from Delegate Lopez earlier, we do have some champions in the House and even a little bit in the Senate, but both chambers are very problematic for bills that we care about. We had a bill that would have really at least made the data centers do something to get all their hundreds of millions of dollars in tax incentives. They would have had to run on renewable energy, for example, and turn off the really highly polluting diesel generators. That failed. That was opposed by the same cadre of folks that Josh Thomas just spoke about. We had a bill that was really important for the solar industry to make Dominion reconnect mid-sized solar projects so that they could be feasible again. There haven't been any in Virginia for the past 14 months since Dominion started layering on hundreds of thousands of dollars of unnecessary fees onto every project. Dominion opposed that, and that, of course, in this General Assembly means that it was summarily, the bill was summarily killed. We do have, so HB 950 that Delegate Lopez's person was talking about has been on our list of priorities. That bill has changed quite a bit. We still think it's a good one. So I would encourage you to reach out to your representatives on that one. Honestly, the good bills are all pretty much gone from the Sierra Club perspective, unfortunately. I would commend to your attention a bad bill that is still alive. In fact, I think Josephus may be speaking to it later, so I won't belabor it. But there are two nuclear bills that are still alive, one in each chamber. One, you probably heard about these. I would just encourage you to oppose them strongly. One of them, the Senate version, which is now in the House post crossover, is Senator Marsden's bill 454, and the House version is HB 1491. That is patroned by Delegate O'Quinn. I won't speak too much about these because other groups have been working very diligently on them and making them better. But they're still nowhere near good enough for us to want to become law. They basically allow the utilities to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and in the case of Dominion, probably billions of dollars on speculative preparation steps to get ready for these so-called small modular nuclear reactors that they want to sprinkle around the Commonwealth. There are a dozen reasons why that's a horrible, horrible idea. I'm a financial guy by trade in my career, and so the one that jumps out at me is that they're incredibly financially infeasible for us and would be a gigantic ripoff for ratepayers. But that. Yeah, so exactly. That's the biggest reason why these bills are terrible. So unlike any other energy that we try to build out here, these bills, and again, Josephus, you're going to talk about this later. So he will give you the better answer, but yes, that is correct. That for both APCO and Dominion, they're essentially laying the groundwork for years of investment in this technology, which is not proven anywhere in the United States. They tried one out west. They tried one out. We would be the guinea pig, 100%. They had to cancel the project they had out west. The idea is you've got kind of a submarine nuclear reactor, sprinkled, several of them sprinkled around the Commonwealth. And they're dangerous and they're very expensive. And we don't know what to do with the waste. So I'll let Josephus just stick a fork in those things in a few minutes. But what I want to do in the last couple minutes here is just encourage you to do two things. Our priorities for this session may be essentially gone, but you can, after this session is over, help all of us by building stronger and stronger relationships with your delegates and your senators. What we were reminded of this session was that that's where the really important work comes in. We can scurry around the building every day, as Tripp and Josephus and a number of us do, and try to, make bills better, try to get lawmakers to support something that maybe they were on the fence with. And that's all really super important work, but it's very difficult work. And changing minds in the building during session is something that I can tell you from doing this for about a decade is very difficult. What is a much better path is after session, meeting with your representatives and making sure that they know what's important to you so that going in to the next session, they've already got it in their minds. And then, of course, the other thing that you can do and must do is every election, make sure that you're working very hard to get better and better representatives here in Richmond and, of course, in DC as well. We've got a huge election next year with the governor. I heard Josh Thomas mention that it's really critical that we get a better governor in 2025, because even though we have nominal, majorities in the Senate and the House, I may be, please forgive me for saying this, but they're certainly not acting like environmental majorities at all. And so they're not going to change, I don't think, in the next year. So we need a strong governor to come in and lean on them in a kind and gentle way and say, look, climate and energy policy is important. We don't have a lot of time to mess around and just punt session after session and not doing anything meaningful. And I really believe that can happen, but it's going to take all of us. And I know that's not legislative, that's political, but they're hand in hand. We got to get a better group in Richmond, including a strong governor, to really make inroads in the policies that we care about. So I'll leave a minute or two for questions before I give way to the professionals. Tim. Yes, so thank you, Tim. I'm so glad he's here. I knew I would forget some important stuff. So Sierra Club has an action alert, and I'm sure many of you have received it on these SMR, these nuke bills, SB 454 and HB 1491. You will see it. If not, go to our website and get it and send it out. There is still a chance that we can kill these bills and save ratepayers hundreds of millions and frankly, billions of dollars. The utilities have ways they can do this, have ways they should be doing this. So please do that. Cannot hear the question. The question was around these nuclear bills and what you all can do. There is an action alert which will generate emails and phone calls. Phone calls make a big difference. These delegates and senators don't get very many. You'd be surprised if they get 15 calls on a topic. That makes a big dent in their day. And they will perk up their ears and say, you know what, they seem to care about this one. So your individual phone call can actually make a difference. So I'd encourage you to do that. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
There's one.
Oh, Anu, I'll let Anu go first, and then we got another one here.
Okay,
Yes.
so this question is, does the governor's stadium have environmental implications?
The stadium. So it certainly does. Sierra Club hasn't been focused on this whole controversy with the stadium. Any big project like that is certainly going to have implications. Tripp may talk about this because a lot of them will be around transportation and land use and things like that. That bill, that argument is basically Louise Lucas versus Glenn Youngkin, right? I mean, can we just be honest? So we haven't spent a lot of time directly, speaking to that, but yeah, sure, of course it has implications, and I don't know what folks' opinions on this call would be about the stadium, but yeah, you move some gigantic complex like that into Virginia, it's certainly going to have impacts.
Okay, thank you. That's all here.
Take the question here then. So that's the big question, right? So the question is, gosh, we only have one planet. There's no, we're not all going to go to Mars and find some new place to live. This is it. There's no planet B. Why are our elected officials not acting like they're the environmental majority that many of us thought we elected last year? That's a kind of a deep question that could take a very long time to answer. I think the short answer is twofold. One is the lobbyists in the building, not the ones in this room who are really good people, but there are lobbyists in the building that outnumber us greatly, that represent businesses that are around to make a profit, and they maximize those profits by, in most cases, working against environmental and climate policy. And it's not just Dominion. We heard about the data centers, certainly the manufacturers. I could rattle off a list of all the top corporate lobbyists, and frankly, we get along with them in many ways, and we try to work with them, but their agenda is very clear. Stop regulation and pave the way for profits. And so I am not saying that all of our elected officials are falling victim to that, but there is a tendency to. There is a tendency to, because they talk to them all the time. We go in, we talk as much as we can. Those corporate guys are in there all the time. And I think the other reason, and this kind of goes hand in hand, is some of our leaders are really prioritizing other things. They're great on women's reproductive rights, on voting rights, and many other issues. This just is not climate and energy. This kind of surprised me too. It does not seem to be high on the list of leadership in either the Senate or in particular the House. So, or I can't say particular, both leadership groups, in my opinion. I'm just a humble volunteer here, but there's been no indication, no evidence that climate and energy policy is a high priority on the House side, and almost none on the Senate side. A little bit with the Senate leader, but my opinion. But that's the name of the game. And so again, next year we got an election where we can get a strong governor who can lean on those, hopefully still nominal majorities, to get some policy done. That's what we saw with Northam and others in the past. All right. Thank you.
And if you would like to learn even a little bit more about data centers, you can always go to our podcast with Tim Sawinski, who's here too. So, the podcast we did. So moving right along, our next two speakers were not just one, but two environmental warriors. They are a friend of the league and the Director of Land and Community Programs for the Southern Environmental Law Center. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm league welcome for Josephus Almond and Tripp Pollard.
Thank you. I'm Tripp Pollard. Josephus, the much more handsome one, will be on shortly. We're just going to divide up real quickly, talking about climate. Heard a lot of the themes already. I mainly work on transportation and land use issues. Transportation is by far the #1 source of carbon pollution in Virginia. And Josephus does a lot of our work on energy issues, the #2 source of carbon pollution in Virginia. So between the two of us, we're working on just about every item this session dealing with climate. In the transportation sector, since only have a few minutes here and we'll go quickly. I'll just say we have recently put out a report on driving down pollution, which is on our website, and have copies here for folks in the room, as well as a brochure on defending the clean car standards that has a lot more information about both the importance of addressing transportation pollution, why it matters, what some of the state steps are that have begun to be taken, and what we need to do. The most significant step the state has taken so far to address pollution from transportation is the clean car standards. They were adopted a couple of years ago. They're just going into effect now, and they will require both cleaner fossil fuel vehicles be delivered to Virginia, as well as an increasing percentage of zero emission or electric vehicles primarily. There were 6 bills this year introduced to repeal those standards, so to take us backwards. Thankfully, all 6 have been defeated. It is definitely a truism, and we've seen it this session. It's easier to kill something bad than to pass something good. We've had a fair amount of success in killing the bad stuff. As you've heard from earlier speakers, a lot of the good bills haven't fared as well. So in addition to defending against attempts to roll back progress on clean cars, the other big area of focus that we've been on is electrification, promoting electrification. Most of those good bills have died, unfortunately, as well as budget amendments. There is one that's still alive. HB 107 passed the House. It's going to be up next week in Senate Agriculture and Natural Resources, and it would create a fund for rural EV charging, as well as EV charging in distressed communities. So it's an equity measure as much as an environmental measure to make sure folks aren't left behind in the transition to electric vehicles. There's also a budget amendment that is in the House budget for $2 million to begin. It's a drop in the bucket, but at least to begin to fund that program. So really important to support that and get it started. We can build on it later. Electrification is important, but it's not going to get us to where we need to go on climate in the transportation sector. The other thing we really need to be doing is funding cleaner forms of transportation, particularly rail, transit, bike ped. The most important issue this session in that area is funding for Metro. The House budget has 150 million extra funding from the Commonwealth to Metro to help face the looming fiscal crisis. Unfortunately, the Senate budget has $0 additional for Metro in it. So the two are far apart. Part of this is caught up in the arena tug of war, which you heard about a moment ago. But it's an incredibly important issue for all Virginians that we have a effective functioning transit system in Northern Virginia. So that's one of the most important remaining issues in the transportation sphere. The other is the need to curb highway spending. Both the House and Senate have some good things in their budget that cut back on the governor's proposal for really what I call the governor's transportation slush fund. Gives him almost unlimited authority to spend money on highway projects. Both the House and the Senate have taken steps to cut back on that. Really important that we all support that. So those are just some of the big things in the transportation sphere, and I will turn it over to Josephus to talk about the energy there.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for having me today. Talk about some of the energy bills we've been working on, some defeats and some success stories. We started out with two big priority bills, which were the ARC Act and the SAVE Act. So ARC was affordability, reliability, competitiveness, trying to make some tweaks to the VCEA to bring down costs of our clean energy transition and try to get some more smaller solar projects in the mix. Negotiations fell apart towards the end with the utilities, and so we weren't able to get to a good place there. That bill actually got sent to sewer, the Commission on Electric Utility Regulation. So we're hoping that there's some avenue to work with that body to get a sort of future version of that bill next year with some of those changes. And then the SAVE Act to strengthen our energy efficiency standards, sort of passed both bodies and was passed by in the House Committee on Labor and Commerce yesterday. So not sure what's going on there, but would be a good bill to strengthen our energy efficiency standards going forward. And then we're, like Bob said earlier, we're playing defense on these two bad SMR bills. So HB 1491 is the one that applies only to APCO, and SB 454 applies to both Dominion and APCO. And so Bob sort of alluded to this, but the way we usually do generation projects is the utility applies for a certificate of public convenience and necessity. They go out and get financing to build the project. And then when they turn the project on and it's delivering electricity, then they can recover costs from ratepayers. That's how it works. With this bill, they get to put all of these costs into site development before they even apply for one of those certificates. And so without any guarantee that electricity will flow to the grid, they get recovery of those costs plus a profit.
And who's paying for that?
And the ratepayers pay for that. It's wild. They can't go out and get a loan for this in the private market because the banks would laugh them out of the room. And it's too risky of a project. And because they can't go out and get the loan on the private sector, they're coming to us as their insurance policy.
See.
So like Bob said, hundreds of millions of dollars in costs, if not billions of dollars in costs in these project development. And they might never even apply for an SMR. So really bad for the ratepayers, and we're doing our work to try and stop those bills as they're moving along. And then I'll just touch on some of the smaller solar bills that have gone through and are still in a good spot. There's shared solar, which would expand the existing Dominion program, which is our version of community solar. There's a shared solar bill that would set up a program in APCO's territory. So currently it's only Dominion that has one. So that will provide customers in Southwest Virginia an opportunity to subscribe to the program. And there's also a bill to authorize solar leasing, which is a great option for, residential low-income folks, and a consumer protection bill that we just saw pass out of the Senate committee that would require a standard disclosure form to everyone that's going solar, so you have all the information you need about your purchase. So some good stuff happening on distributed solar, and we're hoping to see it all the way through. We'll continue to defend these SMR bills, but would encourage you all to contact your legislators and tell them that you don't want to be the insurance policy for these risky investments. Thank you. Any questions? Don't see.
Oh, my stupid touchpad is dead.
Oh, okay. I don't see any in the chat there.
You answered all our questions.
All right.
So this is really wonderful.
We
This
just
is-
got a question, Denise.
Okay, we just have a question. They're coming
Explain
back.
distributed solar.
Explain distributed solar.
Distributed solar is smaller scale, like residential or community solar, typically 5 megawatts and under. So some can be on rooftops or small ground mounted projects, but it's not the big utility scale projects that are taking up hundreds or thousands of acres. So closer to customer load, and does a better job of addressing that customer load than systems that are developed farther away. Thank you.
Just one comment here. So we've seen in schools that there are parking lots with those shelters which have solar panels on top. Is that something we're considering?
Yes, there was
Shade
actually.
and solar.
Yeah, in the House budget, there was $2 million in the Industrial Revitalization Fund to go towards rooftop and parking lot solar. So I think that's a good start. We'll see if we can get it through on the other side as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
This has been great. And I am so proud of how many of you are here. Those of us who are a certain age group, and we know we have grandchildren, we certainly do not want forever chemicals. And we do not, all of us, oops, I'm sorry. Should have been. What we've also learned today is Dominion Energy, there's some things that they're doing that we have to be very diligent, and let's follow up on these bills and see what we can get done just in the short, what's left of this session. But so many of the issues today, thank you, Carolyn, and your environmental team and Anu for really just, I don't know how you do it all and get it together. And of course, Joan as well. And I just want to say thank you to leaders for coming. And we're at the end of our program, and see you all next week. Thank you. Before you stop, hold on. Because now we're gonna fix this problem so we don't mess up. I want to see if this is the